Hey, gun people. Well, just looking at laws here, it's kind of there is a law in Texas that exempts police officers, peace officers, or cops, you name it, that they are exempt from losing their ability to have a gun, even though they got a restraining order for domestic violence. Now, everyone else in the state, if you get a domestic violence restraining order, you're not allowed to have guns or ammunition until you go to court, even though it's an ex parte. So let's look at some restraining order here. So in Texas, there's three types of restraining orders: a temporary ex parte, there's a final protective order, and then there's a magistrate order of emergency protection. We call these just ERO, emergency protective order, EPO. It's an emergency order that normally, if somebody is arrested for domestic violence and the woman says she's scared when he gets out of jail, they can ask for an ERO or an EPO and they automatically get it. Cop fills it out. The judge signs it. Hell, I didn't think you had a cake to judge. We used to have to just call the judge on it. But I think I had some in my car that were signed by Judge Blank because he knew I would end up getting some, and he just signed them blank and said fill them out because they give them out so easy. So that's an emergency protective order. Those are normally only given because of the emergency and there's no time for either party to get into court. Now, temporary ex parte order, ex parte means one party or one party's absent in court. So when you go to court, and this usually a lot of times, it happens in all courts, but it's most common in family court. One party goes in without the other and files for a temporary restraining order. Says my husband beats me, my wife's mean, whatever. And they usually do it because they get the kids. Whoever files for the restraining order gets the kids, and the other party is automatically, usually the man, automatically wrong. So an ex parte order is normally temporary. I thought it used to be 10 days. It looks like in Texas it's up to 20 days. So you can screw a guy over for 20 days, get a temporary order, never show up to court, the order will get canceled, and you pretty much screwed a guy for 20 days, and there's no recourse. Ex parte orders should not trigger anything. If it's that important, then they need to get in court the next day, not 20 days later. Not 20 days of suspending someone's due process rights. I disagree with this. This is total BS. This is all against this woman, He-Man Haters Club, women against domestic violence. Every man is mean. Every woman's problem is blamed on a man, and we'll just get a restraining order and screw him over. So an ex parte order is one party gets to tell their sides. It's temporary for 20 days. Within those 20 days, the other party has a chance to get served and get into court and say, hey, here's my side of the story. Then you get the final protective order, or the temporary order goes away. The judge says, okay, I hear from both of you, and I'm issuing a final order, or I hear from both of you, I think it's BS, so I'm not giving a final order. And then it goes away. Still, the guy gets penalized for 20 days. Total BS. So a final protective order means that both parties have usually talked to the judge, and the judge goes, you know what, I'm giving this. Normally they were up to a year. This says they can last up to 2 years. Normally they give them for a year. Things will calm down. People will move on, and then they'll drop them. It can be up for 2 years. So these are the three types of restraining order. On any of these orders, if you get hit with a restraining order, you lose your right to own or possess guns or ammunition. So you're screwed. Unless you're a peace officer. Wow. And right here in the code, and what section are we in here? Let me curl up here. 85.022 of the family code, I think is what it is. Let me scroll up here. Yeah, family code. Section 6 here. Possession of a firearm. Unless the person is a peace officer, I define section so-and-so, actively engaged in full-time employment in the state. So what it's saying here is, B, in a protection order, the court may prohibit the person found to have committed family violence from the following: committing violence, communicating, going near the residence, going near, engaging in conduct, possessing a firearm. Unless you're a peace officer. I think this law is inappropriate. I think it's wrong. And I don't think it's lawful. Because there's a federal law, and this is just one section of federal law. Yeah, you know, this is gun laws, unlawful acts. All these are about guns. This is one section of one law, nothing but about guns. And then they're going to say, ignorance of the law is no excuse. There's not an attorney or person alive that knows all these laws, all these references, all the changes. And yet you pesky citizens can go to prison because ignorance of the law is no excuse. So let me get down to order. The subject to a court order that restrains such person from harassing, stalking, or threatening, that's protection order, of an intimate partner, that's a dating relationship, or child, or intimate partner person, engaged in conduct, intimate partner, reasonable, blah, 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 shall only apply to court order that is issued after a hearing of the person received actual notice. Let's see. In the terms, it explicitly prohibits the use, attempt to use, threaten physical. Where was the part where it said that you couldn't own a gun? It shall be unlawful for any person to sell, otherwise dispose firearm, ammunition, person knowing to have reasonable cause to believe that such person, and then it goes down here to 8, where it explains a restraining order. So according to federal law, peace officers are not exempt. And I know a lot of cops that lost their job when they got a restraining order for domestic violence. If you're convicted of a misdemeanor domestic violence or a restraining order, you can't carry a gun. Now, some agencies would put you in a position to where you didn't have to carry a gun behind a desk until it was worked out or until you went to court, etc. But there is no exemption in federal law. If you got a restraining order, you can't have a gun or ammunition. Texas law says, you know what? Who needs those pesky federal laws? I love that they blow off federal law. I think it's illegal and I think they're wrong. And I don't think peace officers ought to be exempt. But that's the way it is. And I just found it interesting, and a lot of people asked me about it and mentioned it. And one of my viewers finally gave me the section yesterday, and I was like, okay, let me look that up. And sure enough, it's there. But state law does not trump federal law. Federal law says you can't do it. Texas says if you're a peace officer, you can do it. So anybody that's a victim of a peace officer that falls under this section, you need to get in touch with somebody and let them know they're violating federal law. And I don't know if anything's going to do about it or anybody cares. Because remember, federal governments get to pick and choose on what they want to enforce. Whether they want to enforce immigration, whether they want to enforce marijuana law, whether they want to enforce whatever they don't want to do or do, whether they want to enforce that you stole secret, top secret emails and then you destroyed them and you destroyed your server like Hillary Clinton did. The federal governments get to pick and choose on what laws, and all government gets to pick and choose. This is a bad law. I don't like it. I'm sure I'll get all the cop lovers here. Rick, you don't understand. It's their job and their life. Then they shouldn't be beating their fucking wife. Shit, that's pretty simple. You know? Rick, they should be exempt if they rob a bank because their job is... Well, then they shouldn't rob banks. This is... Look, I don't agree that you should lose your right to have a gun or ammo with a restraining order. I don't think anybody ought to lose that right. But if the pesky citizens have to abide by it, then by God, the government and peace officers ought to have to abide by it. In my humble opinion. All right, well, in that there...